Good morning. I'm gonna pause the music. Hey, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Today is Monday, March 27th. It is our Monday live where we get to connect and discuss a topic that is in relationship to mind body alignment. If you are coming on, hello, good morning. Savi is here. If you're coming on, say hello in the comments. It's so good to see who's here, and also because I get to know who's here and we get to interact with one another. And so, as usual, this is the weekly Duchan Method Live, where I attempt to demystify the mind body connection so that you might attain optimal health, mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and so that you might use these tools and ideas in your own life. Every week we come together here. I like to call this the circle of creation, because we get to create together. We get to share, we get to exchange on a topic that is related to mind body alignment. And for the month of March, we have been exploring topics all around women, because it was International Women's Day, and it's also March, I would say, International Women's Month. So we continue our talk around women, and we have been exploring a few topics around women and confidence. And this week, I want to go into, maybe it's a little bit more of a delicate topic, or something that we might not speak about a whole lot. And that is to talk about how we can challenge our own internalized misogyny and societal stereotypes. And I want to start by just sharing this, giving you the description, exact description for internalized misogyny, right? So that refers to the subconscious acceptance and perpetuation of sexist attitudes and beliefs towards women. And I'm saying subconscious because a lot of the time we ourselves don't realize as women that we might have internalized misogynistic perspectives. And the reason for that, in my experience as a woman, is that we have been raised with a very specific way of perceiving life through a patriarchal lens. And how could we have not? Since the beginning of time, it seems, aside from a few areas, if we look back in her story, we say history, right? Let's just start right there. For me, the fact that we say history, his story, is already a sort of internalized belief system that it's about his story and not her story. So I will just start there for myself. This is why a lot of the time when I am writing, when I'm sharing, I like to say her story. I don't mind saying his story. I'm not negating that. I would just like to add on. And in a way, a big part of my philosophy is not so much to take away, but instead to add on a different way of viewing perspectives. Because as we add on different ways of viewing perspectives in the world, naturally other things slough off. So in this case, this month, I have been specific. And even when I write overall, a lot of the time I will write her story, and I'll put his in parentheses, not to minimize and not to probe and not to prick, but simply because I think it's important that we recognize her story. And I will tell you that I'm not really thinking of this in an equality way. I don't think that men and women are equal. Okay, shocker alert. I don't believe that we're equal. I think that there are important distinctions, and I'm not sure that to look at it from an equality perspective is the way to more harmony. So I digress a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of sprinkle that in there. Hi, hey, good morning. Lorianne is here with us this morning. If you're joining us on YouTube, good morning to you and welcome. It's so good to have you here, Lorianne. And if you're on Facebook and if you've signed in through Facebook, you would need to create an account on YouTube so that you can have a conversation with me via the chat. So if you're here and you're viewing this through Facebook, just take a minute to create an account for yourself on YouTube. All you have to do is create an account and then you have access to communicating. Okay, so without any further ado, internalized misogyny refers to the subconscious acceptance and perception of sexist attitudes and beliefs towards women. Societal stereotypes is different. Societal stereotypes are societal beliefs about how men and women should behave based on their gender. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Societal stereotypes are different than internalized misogyny. Societal stereotypes are societal social beliefs about how men and women should behave based on their gender. And I'm shying away from that a little bit in the intro. I really want to focus more on internalized misogyny because I want to explore it with you. And I want to know what you think about what I'm sharing with you this morning. Now, because we said they're unconscious, internalized misogyny may show up as an unconscious behavior. That means you're not really aware of it. So let's look at some signs that might show up for you, that you might have some internalized misogyny. And by the way, as always, I am not bringing this topic to blame, shame, or minimize anyone because I have internalized misogynistic perspectives that I have been exploring with myself. And a lot of this, excuse me, a lot of this is based on where we come from. It's based on our upbringing. It's based on how we were taught to be as women growing up. And again, there's no blame, shame there. It has a lot to do with culture, where you were brought up, in which part of the world. People in Europe have very different perspectives about women than they do in the United States and even in Canada or in New Zealand or in South America. So today I want to explore this internalized misogyny that we might actually have. And if we can recognize some of these patterns of what we have internally, this is the first step in changing it, in making it something tangible with which you can use so that you broaden your perspective. Everything we do here is to really integrate, invite a new way of seeing things. So if you feel jarred by what you hear today, or if it bothers you, that's a sign that you might want to inquire, explore. Anything that shows up as resistance is a sign that it doesn't sit well with you based on a belief that you have around it. And I'm not suggesting that some things are not wrong and some things are not right. I definitely believe that some things are right and or wrong. However, the foundation for this is to really explore, inquire, check in with yourself as I go down my list of signs that might show up as internalized misogyny within yourself. Okay? Does that sound good? Good morning. Hi, Janet. Nice to have you here. So if this sounds good, give me a 1 or a yes in the comments. Let me know that you are tracking with me. So we're going to first explore some signs of internalized misogyny that you might have in your consciousness, that you're unconscious of. And we are not going into the blame shame, of course, right? That is never the purpose. Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for responding. I appreciate it. All right, so some signs. Let's start with pretending to be chill, pretending to be calm about men doing things that you find inappropriate. Have you ever, ask yourself the question, have you ever found yourself kind of holding back and pretending to be calm around men doing things that you deem inappropriate? That means, in a sense, if we are not responding to it or having some sort of reaction or response, I would say, then there's a part within us. It's not just internalized misogyny in this case. It can also be fear. A lot of the time, we don't dare say something around men or men's, there's a sense of superiority at times, but it's internalized. And even for them, I would say, but I'm not talking about men, I'm talking about women. And I'm just kind of doing a little parentheses here. It's how we have been brought up in society, is that usually if there's women and men in an environment, and I'm not talking about straight, gay, any of that, just overall, if you are a man or a woman, and that's even hot water because now I would have to say people who identify as men and women. Please forgive me for not getting into that layer right now. I'm talking about men and women. And if you want to add people who identify as men and women, but I shy away from it. And I'll tell you why. I'll do a little parentheses. Because even though you identify as a man or a woman, right? If you are someone who is exploring transgenderism or are transgender, absolutely fine. There is still a distinction, a difference in how you were brought up based on the sex you were born with. And I'm speaking from experience in my practice, having clients who have done transition, who are in transition, who are questioning transition of going from one sex to another. Still, when you are born as a man or a boy or a girl based on your sexual organs, there is an immediate way that we associate with someone based on their gender. And you don't have to agree with me. And if you don't, you can write in the comment. Hello, and good morning. Hi, Elise. Welcome. So you don't have to agree with me. And it's a little bit of a delicate topic. And I want to be mindful and kind and loving around it, because it's hard for me to talk about men and women and not say a little bit about people who identify as a man or a woman based on their own relationship with how they are. In this case, I'm just being very clear that I'm talking about men and women as a gender and who identify, who are men and women based on their gender. I'm not negating anyone else. There's still some areas that I am exploring myself in terms of people who identify as, when we are talking about internalized misogyny, which is something that has occurred over hundreds of years of societal evolution. Jenny says, raising both boys and girls, and for me, you are so right. It starts from the beginning. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that, because you have a partner, you are a same-sex couple, and you have 3 magnificent children, a daughter and 2 sons. So societally, when you are born a girl or a boy, there's already an association to how you are in the world, to how people will react and deal with you in the world. Okay? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that choosing to identify as one or the other is wrong. I'm not saying that. I am saying that if you're born with your sex organs as a boy or a girl, you are immediately dealt with in a different way. So from the beginning, there is a possibility of this internalized misogyny, because as soon as you're born, there's already an association with blue or pink. It's kind of been in our reality for many, 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 many years. So when we are dealing as women with this sense of how do we show up in the world, well, it's complicated. And one of the things that you might have done, I have done this. I have pretended to be calm in an environment of men who were speaking inappropriately about women. I've been there. And a lot of the time, it's a very scary place to be, because if you do say something, you are immediately categorized as either a bitch. I don't like to use that word, and that's how it can be perceived, or that you're pushy, or that you're emotional, or oh my God, women. And so then in that environment, energetically, remember, we're talking about mind-body alignment, how difficult it is for women to claim their space when there are these cusps, these whispers, these intonations of inappropriateness around women. So everything I'm sharing with you here, pretty much I've had to deal with in my subconscious and still am. Okay. So that's, again, I really want to underline the importance of no blame shame. So some more signs that you might be internalizing, right? Misogyny. Do you ever find yourself speaking about women in an off-putting way in front of your male friends? Have you ever done this? So you might not have, or you might not remember that you have, but it's a pretty common thing. This is why I want to be really clear that we are not blaming. But sometimes as women, it's possible, I've seen it happen with other women, that we can talk about women in an off-putting way in front of our male friends. And a lot of the time, again, is because there is an undercurrent of pressure that we have to fit in with the larger patriarchal or male-oriented vision of what's allowed to be said. Rarely will we hear in a group that, unless men are bantering with one another, I mean, it happens, but it's not in the same way as when women will tend to put down other women in front of men, again, in an effort to assimilate, to fit in. So I just want you to take a moment and see if that might have ever happened to you. And you don't have to share it. Just inquire, research, be with yourself as I go down this list. Another sign of internalized misogyny is if you're feeling bad about your physical appearance or grooming. And if you're belittling yourself for your physical appearance, because that immediately implies a sense of comparison. Feeling bad about, okay, this is a big one that I really wanted to put this in here because our culture has really gone completely to the other end in terms of what is accepted as an attractive, a desirous, a beautiful woman's body. And one of the things that has become really evident in all types of fashion, marketing, and women's bodies is the lack of hair on women's bodies. Now, I'm just reading a few here. Lauriane says, categorized as a feminist. It happens often at my work. Ah, merci, Lauriane. Yeah, so you can relate to this. Sabi says, even in the tales for children, the characters tend to be very gendered concerning the behavior. Example, prince, princess, etc. Even if there is an evolution now. Yes, thank you, Sabi. We're working slowly, right? I totally agree with you. Jenny says, yes, if a woman expresses intense emotion, there is a label of drama queen. Yes, we're not allowed to express and be emotional. Like there's something wrong with us being emotional, which of course there isn't. Jenny says, and I have used that term for my daughter, which is awful. So we'll use it with our children, right? Your drama queen. Well, let's not I'm going to shy away here from saying that it was awful. I understand that you're saying that your behavior was awful and you're not proud of it, and I love you and support you for that, for being so honest and vulnerable in our circle. And I just want to also hold you and acknowledge you for having the courage to share that, and it's okay. See, this is the thing with this whole internalized misogynistic approach on behavior. Goodness knows I've done it, and I'm still irritated with some things about women. And let's not blame ourselves for it. Let's not call ourselves names. Let's not minimize our actions. Let's not judge ourselves, because it's so much older than us. It's so much older than us. And if there are any men on the call and you're listening, welcome. And thank you. Thank you for being here, because this is a conversation that has to be had around and with everyone. So thank you for sharing that, Jenny. Of course, I never think that you're awful. And it happens. We are going to have reactions. We are going to find it hard to deal with emotions. That's the other piece of it, right? We'll call our children or other women drama queens because they're all emotional, because it's hard to deal with emotion. And I would like to say that for the most part, women at least express emotion, whether it's out of range or not. In a lot of cultures, men are not allowed to express emotion. Do you see the extreme? Because if you're too emotional as a man, you might even be called names, minimized. It's complex. You're welcome, sweetie. Thanks, Jenny, for being always at the forefront of sharing what you're experiencing. So back to body hair, right? I go to the gym a lot, and women have no more body hair, not around their pubics, certainly not underarms, certainly not on their legs, right? Legs, underarms, okay, we all get waxed or we shave or whatnot. A lot of women do. But now it's become this whole idea of hairlessness. So you get everything waxed. You get your thighs waxed. You get your butt crack waxed. You get your pubic hairs waxed, or a little line of pubic hair, right? There's a whole design to it now. And that's okay. It's what's behind it that's interesting. It's the whole philosophy of what does hairlessness represent, where hairlessness represents a child. Hairlessness represents a prepubescent child. So we have to be able to see beyond these interpretations. Now, if you find that it makes you feel sexy and that you feel happier with less hair, more power to you. That's fine. What I'm saying is it's back behind the back of the back, that it's insidious through what we are seeing on a daily basis, especially in fashion, in marketing. And this has changed as well. We are seeing more plus size models. We are seeing different types of expressions in fashion and what's acceptable. And still, at the very top of this is that mostly women get rid of all their hair. And that's a very interesting phenomenon, because if we can associate as prepubescent, there's kind of this relationship with innocence, control perhaps, being controlled. There is a sense of dirtiness that is associated with having body hair. There is a sense of being a hippie or just not quite fitting into the ideal norm of what women's bodies are supposed to look like. What else? Signs of internalized misogyny. So it's amazing to me how in 2023 there are millions of fad diets out there. People encouraging women trying to lose weight. I have 80-year-old clients who want to lose weight. Women. I want to ask you, please get healthy. Go walk in the morning. Drink delicious, healthy juices, eat excellent food, exercise on a daily basis, be in your movement life. But please, no more dieting. No more dieting. There is something that has been seeped into the minds of incredibly beautiful, strong, knowledgeable women around food and dieting and losing the fat. If you want to feel better, mind, body, spirit, and emotionally, go out and walk every day. Go in nature as much as you can. Drink and eat healthy food. It is basic 101. Make sure you sleep well. Get involved in your community. Fad diets and plastic surgery based on what you think is acceptable based on societal norms, because you, of course, need to be changed and shifted and fixed and tucked and so on. That is internalized misogyny, because it's a representation of us not accepting who we are as we are. We're always either too much or too little. Can anybody relate to this? I'm reading more comments. Janet says, I so value this role modeling around opening up the issue of calling ourselves bad. Internalized means inside us. That's correct. Thank you, Janet. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's internalized. It is inside of us. So if we can become aware of this, this is where we can start to shift and change. Sabi says, sometimes I feel that behind waxing, there is also the shame of having hair. Yes, that's exactly right. That is exactly what I am sharing. So having hair is wrong. Now, I don't want to say that that has to be true for everyone. Like, it doesn't have to be associated with badness. What I'm suggesting is that it goes further back over time, that there has been an ideal woman that has appeared in this prepubescent hairless way that is more attractive. And what could be more natural than hair? Everybody wants a full head of hair, right? The other interesting component with kind of a shift in what's occurred over the past few years, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of women have had their entire natural eyebrows removed and instead tattooed with ink. So they have the perfect shape forever. And again, I'm not blame shaming that. It's just interesting to notice how much we have to change about ourselves in order to feel like we fit in. Right now, the other big piece for women, I see it every day, I don't know if you do, but are the eyelash extensions. Because of course, eyelashes that have extensions, there is a relationship with this flapping, with this attraction from the eyes, with batting the eyelashes. There's a sexiness to it. So what I'm saying is that a lot of these things that we alter because we internally don't feel accepted, which is much, much deeper than just the ideal. We don't feel accepted from the beginning, from when we were born. I'm going that far back because everything starts in embryological development. Not actually, not even when you're born. In embryological development. I digress a little bit, but this is my observation from years of being in this industry. And so we get rid of the eyebrows, we pluck out all of our natural eyebrows, we get eyebrows tattooed, we add the eyelashes, we plump up our lips, because there are many ways now that you can increase the quality, apparently, of your look by adding these different components. And again, I'm not saying that it's wrong to do it. I'm asking the question, why do we do it? Why do we have to go to such extremes? We're not even going to talk about aging, right? Because God forbid we start to get gray hair and our skin changes. We start to get, wrinkles. We get browner around the eyes. There's kind of like this natural way that aging starts to almost diminish the light of youth. Well, yeah, that's what happens. As we age, we change. Things get different discoloration in our skin, right? This is what happens over time. And why do we hate it so much? These are all examples of internalized misogyny, that we cannot accept ourselves. Therefore, it can be difficult to accept others for the choices that they make. I am reading more comments. Jenny says, yes, but when anyone finds a pizza diet, I would just like to say I'm here for it. Thank you, Jenny. I had pizza last night. It was fabulous. I too am for the pizza diet. I love it. Lorianne says, yes, and we have been taught not to like hair. Yeah, that, we can't have hair. It doesn't look right. Jenny says, even my little boy is ashamed of his unibrow. Ah, you see? And he's young. Maybe he's, I think you're talking about Mac, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he's 13, I think, if I'm not mistaken, something around there. Yeah, thanks, Jenny. He's relieved that his eyeglasses cover it. Okay, so all of these internalized ways, right? Thank you so much for saying that. He's 13. Yeah, 13. And what an age, right? At 13. Oh, everything starts to shift. For girls, we get our periods, our boobs start to grow. For boys, all kinds of physiological functions get into gear. And instead of embracing it, for so many of us, or our experiences, was that somehow growing up and moving into all these expansions of the self were minimized or shamed. It is deep. So, other signs. Yes, inferiority. If you feel inferior to other more beautiful women, if that's a big deal for you, explore that within you. What else do I want to say? Finally, signs that you might be experiencing internalized misogyny is judgment. Judgment of other women. So let's talk about this just for a moment. Judgment of other women. So have any of you here today had a judgment about how other women dress? Have you ever seen women on the street who are wearing something that you deem inappropriate? Elise shares, in elementary school, my daughter was teased mercilessly for how much hair she had on her arms, her eyebrows, etc. It became a permanent emotional wound. Wow. Thank you, Elise, for sharing that. Yeah, so funny story there. I mean, not really funny, but I'll tell you, I went to school with a lot of Italians and Greeks. And some Italian girls and Greek girls had more hair. It was just the way that it was. Biologically, they had more hair than a lot of other girls. And yeah, I remember that too, Elise, that I was in basketball teams, the swim team. And oh my God, the swim team, when we used to get undressed in the locker, and how every girl was looking at everyone else. And so much comparison already, so young. And I, for one, was comparing myself all the time. I've compared myself my whole life as a dancer and in martial arts, as someone who's been relatively fit most of her life. It's always the bug of comparison. So again, to come back to my question, if you've ever judged another woman on the street when she's wearing something that you deem inappropriate, goodness knows I have. Straight up. It's very hard for me to see beautiful women of all ages wearing clothing that seem to be too short or too tight, or difficulty walking in very high-heeled shoes. I definitely have internalized judgment around that. I find that hard to watch. And then I remember that there was definitely a time in my life, and maybe in your life, where I wanted to look sexy, and I did the very same thing. So when I was in my 20s, I was a dancer, and I was dancing professionally. That was my career at that time. And, everything is about how good you look. And I would wear things. I remember buying myself shoes that hurt my feet. I remember buying clothing that were uncomfortable for me to walk in because I thought they looked sexy and that I would get more attention from men, of course, but from anyone who would give me attention, right? So I want to read a couple more here. Sabi says, personally, I don't care how a woman dresses. What bothers me is the judgment towards a woman who would dress lightly, as if her way to dress would be a door opened to aggression. Thank you, Sabi. Elise says, my fave is judging the high heels in rain or snow as so inappropriate. Yeah, I mean, honestly, thank you, Elise. We do. And Sabi, to your comment, as if her way to dress would be an open door to aggression. And this is part of the problem. I'm not suggesting that women dress in a certain way to be aggressed. However, again, in our philosophy, societally, because we want to be noticed, because we want the attention of men, I'm talking about clearly heterosexual here, but even if you're a woman, man, we wear things that we want to be sexier in, so we get attention. And it's different for everyone, but I'm speaking here specifically about the very short skirts, or the very tight tops, or lots of breasts, right? Or very high heels, like you say, in the rain or snow, Elise. So how might we handle this in a better, more loving, kind, mindful way? Because I'm not saying that women who dress what I would call inappropriately, too tight everywhere and too high that you can't walk in, but that's an old societal, it's an old patriarchal ideal. That's why we do it. But we're not thinking we're going to be aggressed. We don't do it because we think men are going to go towards us and touch us, or anyone for that matter. That's not why we're doing it. We do it because we want the attention, and there's an idealized way of thinking that this is the way we should look to attract the opposite sex. And a lot of the time it works. Now remember, I'm not going into the male psychology around this. However, there is a way, I think, to be sexy and attractive without having to give up so much. And again, that is integrated in our societal culture, in our stereotypes of how we need to appear in order to be sexy, in order to be attractive. It's a deep conversation, and this is the beginning. I'm introducing it here so that we can at least have a little bit of back and forth around it, and so that you can feel into your body, what does this conversation feel like to you? Whether you agree or disagree, if you're resistant, if anything shows up, to be in relationship and contact with what shows up for you. Jenny says, on the reverse, I dressed to cover as much as I could to not be noticed ever. Yes, I know that about you, Jenny. This is true, right? So you have then that opposing perspective. I totally hear that. I know, because I've known you for so long. And so for some women, it's the opposite. They overdress or downdress so that they would not be noticed by anyone ever. And that's super interesting as well. So whenever we find ourselves in these extreme situations where we either want so much attention or we want no attention at all, there is something happening there within us. There is either a way that we want to be seen by so many, or we don't want to be seen. And a lot of, if you look back in your life and your education and how you were raised and where we come from, this is why it's so important to be able to say it out loud and to just say, I used to hide, or I used to wear those tight clothes in the rain and the snow and high heels and not knowing how to walk in them because I thought that's what needed to be done. I thought that's what was sexy. So this is the space here that we share together to explore those sensations, those feelings, as to how do we deal with them? First, I would say, how do we notice them? And in the awareness of the exchanges that we're having today on this topic, there already is a possibility for a more tender, mindful approach as to how to respond to it within yourself, or if you see it in others. Elise says, I think that if women were the dominant humans in our tribe, we would not be using clothes to promote or prevent our sexuality. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Elise, what do you think we would use if not clothes to promote or prevent our sexuality? If we were the dominant humans in our tribe. And I'm just wondering, do you all see each other's comments on YouTube? I just want to know, can you read one another's comments on YouTube? I'm hoping that you can. Let me know if you can actually read each other's comments, if you can see what everyone's working. Yes. Oh, awesome. Yay. Thank you for that. Success. Slowly but surely. We see each other's comments. Awesome. Okay, fabulous. So at least my question remains, if we were the dominant tribe, what would we use to promote our sexuality? Because there's nothing wrong with promoting our sexuality either. I think that's great. I love to look as good as I can. I don't obsess over it. And at the same time, I like to put on a little makeup for my lives. I like to put a little lip gloss. I like to have my hair pulled back or my earrings, so I'm definitely interested in looking beautiful. I'm just wondering about these ideas that come from years and years and years of how we're supposed to look. And I certainly have a way of thinking around that based on how I was brought up. A lot of it was wonderful and some of it not so much. And so I've been dealing with these issues, as I'm sure you have, my whole life. And that's why I'm interested in digging deeper into these explorations. Elise says, I think it would be less about outer and more about inner representation. Yes. Yes, I agree. I think that women, even though I'll tell you, and I'm sure this must have happened to you, we go somewhere and we see a really beautiful, well put together woman who is sexy. I've heard a lot from women how they'll go somewhere and they'll notice someone, and women with women will notice their elegance. There's a sexiness in being elegant, their sense of confidence, how someone flows through the room. Women are more, I think, lean more towards the whole package as being sexy, as opposed to the objectification of women's bodies. That's my sense. And I might be wrong, but that's how I see it. An inner confidence, exactly. I totally agree. Yes, an inner confidence, a beautiful smile, bright eyes, an ease, a facility of speaking with others. These can be very sexy components. And I actually think that men prefer that. I'm talking about heterosexuality here. Men will tend to notice that in women and love that in women. And still, there is this idea, this way that we are being objectified all the time based on how we look. And I have that experience all the time. I am treated differently if I put myself together. If I'm going, for example, to get my car tune up, I will be looked at differently or approached differently than if I go and I'm not made up at all. I mean, this is 101, right? I know it, I feel it. And I'm not a young woman anymore. And still, there's a distinction. Okay, I want to go over a few how to address this. So, of course, I am coming from a mind-body alignment perspective. So just quickly before we end our talk today, how do we address it? Well, most of these will not sound new to you. And at the same time, I want to invite you to let them sit with you for a little bit and see if there are possibilities to open up our hearts of compassion as to our own internalized misogyny. So the first, of course, is to recognize and acknowledge it. Recognize and acknowledge that you might have judgment. You might look at women in a way that is less than optimal because you judge them for some reason. Just notice and recognize it. Of course, practice self-compassion and acceptance. Acceptance is such an underrated tool. Learning to accept things as they are. It doesn't mean that you agree with them. It just means that you're allowing for a space of acceptance that tends to smooth out the waters. Otherwise, if we tend to judge and not accept, there is a belittling, a diminishing of the other. And this is what we are working on in this group, to raise our level of consciousness. It doesn't mean we don't have an opinion. It just means that it's a softer, more tolerant, more compassionate opinion, so that we don't find ourselves minimizing or judging others based on how they look, because we don't know their stories. Nobody knows your story either, unless you've told them, right? And even then, nobody has lived your life. So to really open up this possibility of raising our consciousness, raising our level of intelligence by being able to look at another and to practice the art of acceptance. Educate ourselves. So it's very interesting to look back at her story and to see the evolution of women. And of course, it's more and more promoted today than ever before, and still it's in the background. So one way to deal with our internalized misogyny is to really educate ourselves on women's her story, on feminism, on what feminism actually means, and how we can support one another through education and knowledge. Because I think that when we can share from this space, it actually supports other women instead of minimizing them. For sure, to surround yourself with positive role models. Surround yourself with positive role models, to have women in your life that you feel are beautiful and strong and sexy and open and intelligent, and to nurture yourself with that. And it could even be other, athletes. Certainly, I'm a big fan of women, CrossFit women who are like massive and strong. I just love it. I just think that they really break down this idea of societal stereotypes and what's seen as how a woman should look. I love strong athletic women. I think that's one of the ways where we get to practice our embodiment of empowerment. So to surround yourself with positive role models, and finally, really to challenge and inquire, ask questions around societal expectations, because we're only acting in a certain way because there's a societal expectation. And in the moment, if you are practicing all of these tools of present awareness, this is when the true power of this work works. Because if you are in an environment where there might be a minimization or a judgment, especially if you're in a group of men and women and you hear, remember the first thing we talked about was how we don't say anything in environments if men tend to diminish or minimize women. And that's about other women too. It's not just men. Okay, let me be clear. Let me put that at large. To find your voice from a compassionate place, not from a place of reactivity and a fight, because that only gets worse. But to have the maturity and the practice of saying in those moments, I'm sorry, I'm really not into talking about anyone in a negative way. And perhaps that we can shift the conversation to actually support this or that person in whatever form it shows up. But to really be clear and to voice yourself from a place of mindful awareness so that we can, because silence is also a form of abuse, of support. If we don't say something, we tend to be part of the support system for what is being shared in that circle. So if you find yourself in a circle where people are minimizing others, and particularly women, if people are gossiping or are making discriminating jokes about women, it is up to us to speak up in a mindful manner and to say something like, let's not gossip about women. Let's not minimize others because we don't know what their life is like. Instead, why don't we support them? Why don't we mention what is wonderful about them? This is a real tool to practice in all of our lives for everyone. And in this case, because of today's topic, for women to support and raise each other up. We're not going to like everyone. We're not going to agree with everyone, how they put on their makeup, or if they get plastic surgery, or if they get their body parts redone. We don't know what's going on. If you are someone who needs to continually fix herself, this is where I invite a gentle inquiry. Can you practice accepting how you are more than trying to fix how you are? Does this make sense? Elise says, yes, knowing who you are and your value. Awesome. Thank you. Jenny says, yes, the more I love and respect a person, the more aesthetically beautiful they are to me. Exactly. Sabi says, yes, the objectification of women's bodies in music clips have often shocked me in the past. Even if a part of me understood the need for them to find a job, still it perpetuated objectification. Yes, 100%. This is the whole deal with these music videos where it's very rare that women are not objectified. And that's another conversation, of course, because there are women who use it as a powerful tool. And at the same time, there are others where it's a complete objectification. And so there's a lot to explore, but I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you got something from today's conversation, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. As usual, as a gentle reminder, you can find this on my YouTube channel. A couple of hours after it's done, we upload it. It's on the YouTube channel. Please invite your friends, share it. If you could share it with people who you feel might benefit from this, I really appreciate that. Share it with your daughters, your sisters, your friends, your sons, your partners. And also that we are continuing our daily gratitude practice on the Facebook group page at the Duchenne Method. I'm really working on finding deeper research in the art and practice of daily gratitudes. And I have been finding some super interesting stuff that I will be sharing as my daily shares. And finally, I've started this morning doing a very easy, quick exercise. And I've decided, because the weather's changing, I'm in the northeastern part of the United States and we're moving into spring. And I decided that I was going to roll out of bed and go for a 5-minute walk immediately as I get up. And the reason I'm doing it is because I learned something about how the morning light affects your eyes positively, that the light of the morning actually increases healthy levels of cortisol in your body. And so I'm just testing it out. Now, I know, of course, going out for a walk in the morning always rejuvenates me, but this is literally a roll out of bed and going for a 5-minute walk around the block, maybe 15 for me. I have a beautiful park, so I decided that I'm just going to try doing that every morning as I get out of bed, because I also want to practice things that are going to increase my level of energy, my focus, and to really start to do these daily practices in a way that is easy, integratable, and fun, and that really helps me to increase my mind, body, alignment, health. Thank you for being here today. I totally appreciate you. I hope to see you next week. We are starting with another topic next month, which is going to be all around my mind body embodiment practice and the program that I'm starting in the summer. And I'm going to be breaking down some of these concepts and tools in April so that we can go deeper into diving into mind body alignment health in relationship to integral anatomy, moving into movement, also exploring all types of different psychological topics around mind-body alignment health. So I hope you'll join me. Thank you for being here today. I love you and appreciate you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.